Well, hello. We've got the Kioti CK3510SE in the garage. I've got the loader wedged up with a piece of angle iron, and the Kioti now has 54 hours, approximately 54 hours on it. The first service on the machine or unit is 50 hours, so I'm a little bit over. Purchased the Kioti brand new. It had about 10 hours on it, and I've been using it around the house doing firewood stuff and moving some dirt and pallets, so on and so forth, and put 40 some hours on it and been greasing it every 10 hours at 20 or 10, 20, 30, 40, and then we'll do it today at the 50-hour service. But today the work that needs to be done on the Kioti CK3510SE, we gotta do engine oil and filter. 1.6 gallons of oil, engine oil goes back in. Transmission oil filter, the hydraulic fluid filter, and then the hydrostatic transmission oil filter. You need to grease it, check the wheel bolt torque, check other fasteners. I think there's been some issues on the loader fasteners coming loose. I'm going to put a wrench on those and tighten them up, make sure they're tight. Check the air cleaner. We'll check the brake pedal free play, clean the radiator grill, although I haven't been operating it in dusty or leafy or grassy conditions, so it should be pretty clean. And then the last thing is the fuel filter as well. And then grease. I don't know if I mentioned that. Grease everything. There's a bunch of grease points on the loader, and then there's a few on the actual tractor. I've got all my fluids here. I'm using mostly the Kioti lubrication fluids, and then also at the dealership services both Kioti and Bobcat. And because Bobcat released the tractor series here this year, those tractors from Kioti or from Bobcat are exactly the same as these Kioti tractors. So the dealer cross-referenced all the Kioti maintenance parts, the filters and such, to the Bobcat, because the Bobcats are slightly cheaper. So I've got, you can see they're all Bobcat boxes, but I pulled off all of the stickers, so they put stickers over top of the markers, and the Bobcat part numbers are different than the Kioti or the Daedong part numbers, but these part numbers match exactly what's specified in the book for the fuel filter, oil filter, hydraulic fluid filter, and also the transmission filter. So I'll put the cross-reference numbers in the description for the different filters, so that if you're searching for them, you can use either or. But that's helpful. That was helpful for me, and I worked a little bit hard to get these stickers off. And yeah, these part numbers from Bobcat match up exactly with the Daedong Kioti part numbers. So first step on the list is to work on the engine oil filter and oil draining. So we'll get to that next. So here's my piece of angle iron under the loader. It's wedged in between the cylinder and then the base to hold the loader up, even though we can lock the hydraulics with the little lever there. But we'll open up the hood. Oh, there's a little bit of stuff, a little bit of debris on the screen. We'll get that cleaned off. So here's the oil filter. I had it operated earlier, so it's a little warm. The engine's warm. It's not cold by any means. So there's the oil filter. And then underneath there are actually two drain plugs for the engine. Drain plug 1 and drain plug 2, because the drive shaft for the front axle goes between the oil pan on the engine. So we'll get the socket and pull these, get a drain pan, and we'll drain this oil. Okay, the socket required for these drain plugs is 17 millimeters. There's a little bit of, they assemble the engine and then they put paint on it, so it's a little bit snug, but 17 does fit on there. That's number 1 loose. Number 2. Right. Nice lukewarm engine oil. Alright, the next step is to pull the oil filter, and here's the oil filter that I have. Part numbers match E6201-32443. This is the Bobcat number with the sticker peeled off, the same number. So to minimize a little mess while that drips, is I'm going to take a filter or a funnel, set this up to the side, and a punch. Slide these hoses out of the way. I'm just going to punch the bottom of this oil filter. To hopefully yeah, it's kind of dripping. Maybe I got to put one on top too. There we go. Let it drain a little bit while to minimize any spillage coming out of the when you pull the filter off. Get my oil filter wrench. While the oil filter drains, I'm going to replace or reinstall the drain plugs in the bottom of the drain pan or the oil pan. We're done with them. They have reduced to enough. Make sure the washers are still on there. Okay. Then we'll tighten them down till they feel right. Alright, those are tight. Now we gotta pull the oil filter off. Alright, so I'm taking a little bit of the used motor oil and lubing up the new engine oil gasket, oil filter gasket, so that's lubricated. Oil filter wrench on there. They really tightened it on there from the factory. Holy smokes. Usually don't need it that tight. Okay. And we'll install the new one right away. Okay. Clean up our mess. Alright, now on to finding the oil filter, oil fill. Here's the dipstick, and I need to find where we fill the oil. Okay, so it wasn't super obvious of where the oil filter fill is, but I found it after a quick Google search. Right underneath the fuel filter, there's a little knob right there, right back here. It needs to be removed, so I'm gonna work on removing that. And this is where having the loader up in the upright position helps, because that probably would be in the way. I'm gonna disconnect this fuel filter sensor because I know that's gonna come off later anyways. I'm gonna remove the fuel filter, get that out of the way. And there we go, oil, found it. Okay, so the book says 1.6 gallons. So we'll get I've got a 2.5 gallon jug, and we'll work on getting it filled. A funnel. Okay, I have the gallon jug. I bought a 2.5 gallon jug of engine oil, 15W40, and I'm breaking it down into 1 quart pieces. 1.6 gallons is what, just over 6 quarts. So I need 6 of these, just so I know exactly what I'm putting in. So we'll put 6 of these in, and that'll get us to 1.5 gallons. And then we'll have to adjust later for that. So that's 1.5 gallons of engine oil, 15W40 by Kioti Lube, and that should get us close to where we need to be. The specs call for 1.6 gallons. I only put 1.5. Get close without going over. We'll run the engine for a little bit, let it rest, and then check the dipstick later on. So I'm gonna pull the filling tube out. And check the oil ring looks good. Put the cap back on. Check the dipstick one time just to make sure that we're close. So look right between the ticks. I gotta check what the owner's manual says again. Yeah, on the dipstick there's 2, I don't know if you can see it on the camera, but there's 2 marks. And the level should be between those 2 marks, and we are about right there so far, right there. Right in the middle. So we'll run it, and let me start it right now, and then we'll let it run for a couple minutes, and then shut it down and check it in a little while. While we're working on this side, I'm going to work on the fuel filter and get a couple rags in here because I think this might make a mess. I'm gonna pull off the sensor, and that should allow me to allow this to be drained. I think this sensor unscrews. I think. Try. See what happens. The directions are very minimal on the fuel filter side of things. And actually doesn't even say to replace at 50 hours, but I'm going to do it anyways because it's good maintenance. I think I can get that out of there. First of all, I'm going to take a needle nose pliers or vice grips and just pinch off this fuel line just a little bit, because I saw that on another channel. Once this is removed, it doesn't really shut off. I just want to make sure I minimize the amount of fuel it spills. So the fuel filter comes like this. Got to move the fuel bowl from this one to here onto this new one, and then we'll lube up the O-ring. So set that over there and move my phone so it doesn't get full fuel. And see if this comes off. It does come off. This is threaded, so I'm going to get my thing here, a rag. It's a nice design. A lot of threads. And it doesn't come off. It doesn't come out, so you know what? I wonder if I just pull the whole fuel filter off first. That'll capture all of it. That worked. All the fuel is inside the filter. Now you just dump it out. It's got a used diesel fuel container. Now that's empty. I'll take it over to my bench vise and put the fuel filter in the vise and take this bowl off. I don't want to break it. It's on there pretty tight. Okay, to remove the fuel bowl from the fuel filter, 27mm socket. There's a little O-ring on there. So we'll make sure we'll lubricate that with some diesel fuel. And grab the new fuel filter. And we'll install that. There's an O-ring, piece of plastic there. So we'll put that into there. O-rings going in there nicely. As long as the O-ring's good, should seal it. So wipe it down, install the fuel or the water and fuel sensor, because it can't be put back on with the filter in the unit. That's on. And take some diesel fuel, wipe it on the oil O-ring. Clean up around here. Actually, it might be good if you're doing an oil filter, you get good access at the oil fill plug here with the the fuel filter off. So maybe pull the fuel filter off first and then do the oil fill. Huh? There's a bleeder right on this side. So I'm gonna pull that bleeder off. I think it's a 10 millimeter. You can see the bleeder right back up in there. There's the bleeder. 10 millimeter. And open that up, remove it. That'll allow us to fill this fuel filter up. Okay, so now to speed up the fuel filter fill, there's a pump up on top. Oh. That'll fill up the fuel filter. But it purges the air out of the fuel filter. So you don't want any air in your lines, especially going on this common rail diesel. So you pump it until there's no air coming out of the bleeder. Alright, so now we don't have any more air bubbles, it's just solid fuel coming out, so we know that this is now topped off. So put the filler plug or the bleeder screw back in. I'm gonna hit it one more time just to make sure. And, yep, solid fuel. So we know the fuel filter's full. Alright, that's done. Got a mess, clean up. So wipe down the fuel filter. I know I spilled a lot underneath. Alright, so the next thing to do is to, now that I have the fuel filter done and the oil filter and engine oil filter done, is to replace the hydrostatic transmission, which is on the driver's side. If that would be the left side of the tractor, underneath the foot step here. Replace this filter, and then we'll replace the hydraulic fluid filter, which is on the other side. So we'll put this guy on here and get that on backwards. And I've already pre-lubed the new filters with hydraulic fluid. Drain pan here, ready to catch anything that falls out. And also receive the new filter, the old filter. So I'm just making sure this is the same filter. It is, as far as mouth goes. Okay, install the new one. Alright. Alright, that's tight. Clean up. Alright, so I think this one's a gusher. There's a lot comes out of here, so I've got the new filter ready to go. I'll pull the old one off. Of course, these hydraulic lines are rubbing right on it. So these filters are painted from the factory, so then if you get past a certain point and there's problems and you haven't replaced these filters, service knows. So new one ready to go. It's the same filter. I checked it. Alright. It's tight. Wipe it down. Clean it up. And we're good to go. Now we just gotta top off the fluids, do some greasing, check tightness of the wheels and the loader connections, and just check things over, and the 50-hour service is done. So okay, so the 50-hour service on this machine is done. We went through and did the oil and oil filter, we did the fuel filter, did the hydraulic fluid filter, the hydrostatic transmission fluid filter. After draining those two, had to fill up the hydraulic fluid, which is back here in the back by the 3-point hitch. There's an orange cap right down there. Fill that baby up just a little. I'll put about a half a gallon of fluid in. Went through and greased all of the loader grease zerks. There's a grease zerk on the front axle, on the front side and on the back side. On this Hydrostatic CK3510SE, there is also a grease zerk underneath for the lift lever, I believe. It's up underneath here. I need a light to see it, but look for it. That's one thing they need to do. I measured the brake pedal free play. It was about 3/4 of an inch, which is within spec. And then the last thing I did was torque all of the lug nuts on the wheels. The fronts I got turned a little bit. That was a 17mm socket. And I also torqued all of the loader mounting bolts. There's 7 on either side, 3 up front here, 4 in the back, and I'd say 50% of them I was able to get a 1/2 to 3/4 of a turn out of. So that's pretty important to make sure to check. I think the manual says every 25 hours, but I'd check it every 10, or I mean every 25 hours. I guess I haven't checked it yet, so I'm at 50 now. So yeah, 25 hours seems about set. Seems to make sense. So make sure that all of these bolts are torqued every 25 hours. And I missed that in the manual, and I'll make sure I do that again. I have seen cases where those bolts fall out and you can't get them back in. So make sure you torque them. So there's 7 on either side. It's a 19mm socket. Very important. So with that, the 50-hour service is done. I ended up going through and I cleaned up a lot of excess grease from greasing every 10 hours. You get a lot of excess grease around each joint, so I cleaned that up. But other than that, the 50-hour service is complete on the CK3510SE. Hopefully you learned a lot. Hopefully I was clear and concise once the editing is done. And on to some more work with this this tractor. I got a cutting edge on the bucket this week too. I picked that up from the dealership. Actually bolted on really nice. All the holes are lined up. It's a double-sided cutting edge, 1/2 inch thick steel. It was really nice. So hopefully this spring I can get a front remote hydraulics installed. We'll see how the funds come out. I don't really need them yet, but I'd like to get it before those parts become obsolete. But this machine is ready to keep working. I'm going to install some lights here on the ROPS and go forward. So thanks for following along, and we'll catch you again. Have a good one.